Italian Grand Prix has come and gone, and Max Verstappen could potentially be crowned a world champion next race at Singapore. So now seems like a good time to come back to a Reddit video. We haven't had one in a while, and let's check out what you guys have been saying after that less than insane Italian Grand Prix. And first things first, obviously Ferrari had a special livery, some special overalls today in yellow, and hear me out, this is just true. It fits so well. Binotto has got the look to be Gru. In the end of it, even all this scheming and the minion look for the Ferrari just couldn't help what ultimately was just a very quick Verstappen again. And obviously, we didn't really get to see a chance of potentially maybe anything happening at the end with the safety car. So how will Ferrari ruin Leclerc's race this time round? Well, I don't think they ruined it. I think they just didn't actually have a very good chance of winning this race. Despite getting pole position for Leclerc, ultimately, either way, I think it would have been quite difficult for them. You know, they tried the early two-stop. They didn't gain as much advantage as Leclerc, you know, even alluded to in his interviews from that early pit stop, because they pit to try and get a virtual safety car advantage. Because that ran out as they exited, the advantage wasn't large enough, and they were playing a bit of catch-up. But even on the softs, Leclerc only gained 3 seconds, 4 seconds at most on Verstappen before ultimately the safety car at the end came out. So he wasn't really catching him on that two-stop. And on the one-stop, if they'd gone to one stop, you know, I mean, would they have really made any bit of difference? Because I think Max had some insane pace on worn softs and really good pace on the medium. So I think it was inevitable that Verstappen and Max were... I think it's inevitable that Verstappen and Red Bull were going to actually eventually catch Leclerc anyway, and maybe have an on-track battle. Maybe Leclerc could have done something with that, but I think ultimately they just didn't actually have the overarching pace to still win this Grand Prix. Get pole, sure, but obviously Verstappen was never going to get pole because of the penalty. This lad got P9 in his Formula 1 debut in a Williams. De Vries, he did so well. What a hero, and he beat the GOAT. He beat Latifi in his first race. FP3 only, different steering wheel in the Williams car versus Aston Martin that he tested earlier, and the Mercedes car, and that was ultimately the reason I think that was of that brake bias issue that he changed by accident in his qualifying lap, so it could have been even higher in quali. And then there was no wackiness in this race. He just on merit actually just kept that position and stayed in that pack and train in the DRS and got points, and now means Latifi is 21st out of a 20-car championship. Is Ferrari going to F up in Monza? Yes, but in yellow. They didn't fluff up, but they still didn't win. So will they lose the race? Yep, and then yes in yellow, I guess. The GOAT returned. Latifi fastest in Sector 1. That Williams car was actually rapid. Kind of almost a shame, you know, obviously Albon with appendicitis, so wishing him the best recovery, obviously. Would have been cool to see what he could have done, because, you know, potentially could have done even better than De Vries, maybe, because I think there was a little bit of inexperience from his side of maybe an overtake he could have potentially done in the AlphaTauri ahead of him, and just in general, perhaps Albon would have had just a bit more in the tank to do something else, but that Williams was rapid. They had to make the most of that, and they did with one car at least. Can you imagine if Albon and De Vries are in that car next year as a duo at these kind of races where they are actually quite quick in a straight line and they've actually got some decent pace versus other cars? They could actually consider, you know, these are the kind of races where Alfa Romeo, Haas, maybe even Aston Martin, you know, when they've had their respective races like this where they've got relative pace, they've made the most of it, whereas Williams only make half the most of it because only one car's doing that. So inspirational from Yuki. This touched my heart. 2 secs dead. We have a radio message from Yuki Tsunoda. Just all believe nothing could be aired at all. Can't even get their paint strategy right. It's asymmetrical. Okay, interesting. I know sometimes cars actually are asymmetrical because they'll because of the way the circuit rotates and the cooling, they'll sometimes actually make the side pod a little bit asymmetrical. It's been noted a few times technically, but paint-wise, there's no reason. Why? But what's happened? Even the painter can't get it right. These graphics just keep getting better. Always wonder how much slower I was in my 2005 Nissan Micra versus an F1 car around Monza. What is this? 120, 45 seconds, 75, a family car. Okay, yeah. I guess it's kind of cool in a way. I mean, you genuinely might want to know that, but it was a very... I had to double take at the random graphic they're giving. This is also in like a lull period, so I guess it's just throwing up graphics for the sake of it. And I'm guessing this trade offer did not pay off then. Oh, this did not age well. It's going to be an interesting race. It was 4 out of 10 at most. This, it was not interesting in the end. Even all these penalties didn't really mix it up. You had Hamilton and Sainz making their way through, and Sainz, to be fair, some nice overtakes, but kind of, you know, you could see the pace was overwhelming that he was going to get that high up. And then even Hamilton as well, you know, slow start, but eventually got through everything. Yeah, and the most entertaining battle was Schumacher versus Latifi in the middle of that race. Oh my god. Can someone tell me in which position I will start tomorrow's race? That in itself is funny because the F1 drivers had no clue where they were because the FI took 4 hours. It was 8:55 p.m. UK time when they tweeted out the official starting grid for today's race. But yeah, F1 Twitter really is summed up like this. Yeah, this has to stop. The last Aston Martin left on track. Oh, woe is me. Lawrence Stroll, eat your heart out. He's in pain tonight. Aston Martin had a howler. It was so upsetting. But Vettel, in his last Italian Grand Prix in Formula 1, has to DNF like that. No happy memories like they were in his very first race win in F1 where he won here in a Toro Rosso. No special helmet to commemorate that. Didn't go well. F1's a cruel sport. Never you get the fairy tale goodbye you want. Rarely. That's frustrating. Yeah, that was legitimately the only Aston left. On the actual note of the safety car coming out and then ending, and the race ending under the safety car, because I'm sure people want me to address it and, you know, maybe get an opinion out, and I'll ask you guys what you make of it in the comments below. Sound off and thumbs up on the comments. Obviously the safety car had to come out because of Dan Ricciardo's positioning. It was a very dangerous spot in the track. Even with the cherry picker truck, it was a very dangerous situation because the cars were actually so close together, and it's almost like we've learned nothing from the past of those kind of vehicles being on track. Like, I know we're under yellows, people are going slowly and it wasn't raining, but just the fact that cherry picker was there on circuit is never a comfortable thing. But the fact that, one, it took so long to retrieve the car, and two, the FIA and the stewards kind of released the safety car at the wrong time, meant that we ended under the safety car. Now, obviously, that was, you know, the rules were followed letter to the law, and that's what we want to see. That's exactly what they should have done, is put out the safety car, get it out, and then obviously there weren't enough laps left, and they couldn't rush through the process, so, you know, it was going to end under a safety car, and that's exactly what should have happened in that situation. But there was potentially some chance to not end under a safety car. Maybe if they put the safety car out at the right time to catch Max, because Sky, Karun Chandok did a really good analysis on Sky about that they picked up Russell, the safety car picked up Russell, and it meant that by the time that even the safety car blinkered to let Russell by, to then release all the cars to then pick up Max, it was already like a lap and a half had already gone, because he picked up George at turn 1, and then at Ascari, that's when that's when Max was then picked up by the safety car afterwards. So it was like 12 cars back, so they wasted that time, and then obviously then you've got to then get everyone through, get lapped cars through, then let us all bunch up and go. So even though it was perfectly fine in terms of the rules, the FIA did nothing wrong really. They followed the rules completely. It just could have been done better to actually allow for some racing. Like, they kind of almost fell asleep in terms of like, oh, let's quickly spring into action, put the safety car out, get Max, so we get all these lapped cars in, and then also I feel like maybe getting Ricciardo out of the way took so long. And in that instance, in terms of getting Ricciardo out of the way, in my opinion, if you're at the end of a race, and obviously all of us would rather there be some racing, of course, but, you know, within the rules of, you know, the safety car is, you know, all the rules are, you know, done in the correct way. So lapped cars are all waved by, you'll bunch up and you get going if there's enough laps to go. In that kind of instance, when Ricciardo is in such such an awkward place, and the cherry picker itself was in a bit of a iffy situation of where it was. You know, could they have red flagged it because it was so convoluted of getting Ricciardo out of the way, because you had to have this big truck on circuit, and you never know. If someone drops the back end, they're going to hit that truck, you know, at that point in the circuit. I know it's not very likely because they're going so slow. That car's not at that section of the circuit is a straight line off a corner that's quite slow anyway, so there's not a chance. But I don't know, I think a lot of people's opinions, even in Christian Horner and Red Bull's opinion, in terms of, you know, they were the car in first that could have, you know, there was an attack maybe that would have been allowed by Ferrari if there was a red flag situation. Even they said, just not in terms of red flag, they just said the safety car took just too long and they could have been brought in. Even Leclerc thought that as well. You know, on certain, the drivers thought that, you know, in terms of, to them, there was maybe 2 laps of faff where we could have easily have got going for racing, even away from the red flag conversation. It just basically, that whole procedure was a bit slow of them picking up the drivers and everything like that. But then also people were putting out the idea of red flag just because maybe Ricciardo was too difficult to get rid of. And maybe in that instance, you know, kind of almost like the F1 game, where the F1 game, you're only allowed 2 laps of safety car, and that's it. You know, maybe there should be a kind of onus to, you know, you've got all these paying fans paying for racing. Maybe if it's going to take more than 2 laps to get this car out of the way, you red flag it so that you get a nice standing restart, which is exciting, but then also you get the car out of the way and there's no kind of, you know, more faffing, and you're not losing precious racing laps of a race potentially. That was one way to look at it, but for me personally, it's just more of a case of they actually just should have picked up Verstappen so much quicker, and then when they did, and if they did pick up the leaders straight away, they could have told Burt Mylan to really slow down and then quickly ASAP get that McLaren out of the way. Then you have at least 1 racing lap going. Literally just even 1 would have been a nice fitting end, because in the end of it just was a very anticlimactic ending to the race, even though that was, you know, by the rule book. Nothing was broke, no rules were broken in terms of the FI, the way they stewarded it. They just could have been a little bit more on the ball game, which a lot of the times is the case. They're just not on the money, on the ball quick enough with these kind of things sometimes. You know, a case in point, the grid. Why did it take 4 hours to publish the grid? They were just all very slow this weekend. The Monza curse is real. 2019 Leclerc wins, 2020 DNFs. 2020 Gasly wins, 2021 DNFs. 2021 Ricciardo wins, 2022. It's real. It is real. So next year, don't put your bets on Verstappen winning. Weight loss, not driving with Albon's car next year. Latifi and the 1 appendix. Albon's got permanent weight loss reduction here. He's brought an upgrade to himself, not the car. Running 19th as we speak. Absolutely amazing. Right, that's the better use of that graphic right there. Really well done. Really well. Powered by AWS. It must be true. Holy GP2 engine. Mad Lad Award for the F2 sprint race goes to Clement Novalak, who went through the speed trap at 335 kilometers per hour, a mere 15 kilometers per hour over the car's alleged top speed. And the speed here of Vettel on board, I mean, it's Vettel in the Aston Martin. The Aston Martin seems to be quite a draggy car, but they're only at 328. So the F2 car, this F2 car has beaten an F1 car in the speed trap. On the note of GP2 engine, I want to point out, I don't think anyone's memed it here quite yet, but Alonso's radio in the middle of that gave me strong GP2 engine McLaren vibes when he said to Alpine, he was like, is there something wrong with the engine or whatever, like the deployment? Because, you know, like we seem pretty, you know, he just wants to check. He's like, no, everything's fine, Alpine, everything's fine. And he just goes, wow, full stop. Like, he's leaving the team. He doesn't care. He knows there's an issue probably because they had to retire anyway. So actually, wasn't even memeing them or being savage, who genuinely was worrying about the engine. But just wow, that's all he had to say. Savage. Lewis has been a champ with meme formats this season. Finishing under the safety car, huh? Must be nice. He's actually buffering. He looks like an NPC. He's having his Alonso 2012 moment again. He's getting PTSD flashbacks. Latifi at the Williams HQ next week after beaten by Vries. He just can't enter. It won't open. Just go away, mate. Just go. We've already signed it, but you may as well just pack the bags now. And to end things off in the same way we started this is the same picture. Goodbye to the yellow overalls. We all miss Ferrari minions. But yeah, that's going to be it then for today's Reddit video. If you guys did enjoy, hit that like button and get involved in the Reddit. There has been a break in Reddit videos, but I will be bringing them back. So start posting once again any wacky clips you have from F1 22 or F1 Manager 22, of course, as well, or IRL F1 memes and jokes and whatever. And we'll be starting up some more regular weekly Reddit videos once more. So get involved. Link down below. Let me know what you thought in the comments below about that race, the championship. What do you make of it? The fact that Max could actually legitimately round this out in Singapore. And if you're new around here, then do get subscribed for weekly Formula content. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.